Chapter 17. Courthouse Takeover, 1981. Peaceful coexistence among nations does not include coexistence between the exploiters and the exploited. Che Guevara. Judge, I'll ask you one more time. Order the staff and the deputies to leave right now, I said.
Wait a damn minute, said the deputy on duty. You don't tell us what to do, muchacho pendejo. I tell you what to do. You don't have pelos yet, let alone balls to do this. Who do you think you are? You and your friends get the hell out of here now, before I shoot your skinny ass.
This would have never happened had the Federalists not arrested 3 high school students during a peaceful demonstration. Students were asking for affordable classes at the local private high school. There were a lot of them who wanted to continue their education, but the public high school couldn't take any more students. Their classrooms were maxed out, and the private school had just raised tuition. Because this demonstration was causing a lot of disruption outside the federal building in the downtown area, the powers to be broke it up. Furthermore, to make sure that nobody else would continue with this demonstration, they fabricated a crime and charged 3 students with it. Everybody knew it was a lie. I did anyway. I had been a witness of these events, and nothing of the sort ever happened. Hold on, officer, said the judge calmly while looking at me. I was a high school freshman. Look, Elio, I'll pretend this federal offense never took place. If you and your friends leave my courtroom now. Hell, I won't even call you Mom, said the judge with a smug face and an authoritative smile. Freeze the story. This moment reminded me of my 8th grade history teacher. My impressionable mind was walking into a page in history of the ongoing fight against oppressive governments. Mr. Cadena, the influential teacher, had always told our class of fresh and pliable minds that Mexicans could never be conquered. Tarascan's minds and hearts could never be subdued. Today, 1981. Like at the beginning of the century 1910, the revolution against oppressive governments had been unleashed. The Mexican Revolution of 1910, led by Madero, a wealthy young revolutionary, and 2 Mexican heroes from humble and oppressed origins. In the north of Mexico, José Doroteo Arango Arámbula, also known as Francisco Villa, Pancho Villa, or Simple Villa. And in the south of Mexico, Emiliano Zapata Salazar, also known as Emiliano Zapata, or simply Zapata. These Mexican heroes fought against Porfirio Díaz, the Mexican dictator who had ruled Mexico for over 3 decades. Mr. Cadena opened his Mexican history class. Excuse me, teacher, Pedro asked with a puzzled face. My uncle says that Pancho Villa was a thief and an outlaw all of his life, and that the revolution gave him an excuse to play his Robin Hood. All he did was rob and abuse people. That's what some people say, Pedro, answered Mr. Cadena, in the way that we all knew he was about to uncover a secret. So, why do you say he's a hero? Asked Pedro again, not knowing Cadena was about to put all doubts to rest. Back to my story. Things were happening so fast. We all, high school freshmen, never thought we were going to make it this far in the courthouse, let alone make it all the way to the judge's private chamber. But there we were. The Honorable Mr. Servin's private chamber was grand. It looked like one of those Victorian rooms you see in the movies. Pristine, polished, expensive-looking oak furniture, paintings of Mexican presidents, pictures of Mr. Servin, the presiding judge, shaking hands with important-looking senators, shaking hands with Mexican President López Portillo. I don't think so, Judge. We ain't going nowhere. Not until you release our friends. I said with the tone and authority I thought Pancho Villa would have used after he had won a battle and taken over a city. Oh my God, el policía has a gun, el policía has a gun, a student yelled, causing a sudden and loud stampede of students out of the courthouse, trampling over each other, running and zigzagging, afraid they'd be shot. Although most of the 200 students were waiting outside, the stampede was caused by at least 20 who had made it all the way to the judge's chambers. Ricardo and I had told everybody and the leading pack that this was going to be a peaceful protest. Nobody had mentioned anything about taking over the courthouse. That was illegal and extremely dangerous. Right now, the police officer was pointing the gun at my face. Students and the courthouse staff were running and screaming. It was clear that the looming storm of shit in the horizon was ready to dump on all of us. I'll blast this mother effer, Judge. Just say the word, said the officer with a chilling tone, pointing his .45 into my face. I almost felt my pee and poo ready to come out. Almost, I underlined. Freeze the story. This was one of those times that, when facing danger, my mind wandered with peaceful and safe thoughts. I went back to Mr. Cadena's comfortable classroom. Let me ask you something, Pedro, asked the historian with a lawyer's tone. Is your uncle wealthy? Yes, he is, but he has worked hard for his money. Besides, he employs a lot of people, and he's an outstanding citizen, said Pedro proudly and defensively. He was related to a powerful man in Apatzingán. I see, Mr. Cadena said, closing in. Isn't it true that your uncle, like Porfirio Diaz, amassed his wealth and acquired his political power when he served as a senator? Well, I don't know about that, but my uncle helps a lot of people, said Pedro defensively again. Do you know that people like your uncle, Porfirio Diaz, or any other wealthy man are the reason why Mexico is bankrupt? Do you know that those people lie, cheat, and steal, not only taking land, but also people's dignity and the way of living? And like the Americans say, they also take the pursuit of happiness. Mr. Cadena asked rhetorically. While Villa might have been an outlaw and Zapata a humble peasant, it was because they grew up illiterate, without any opportunity to advance in the world, thanks to the corrupt Mexican government. Mr. Cadena finished his long-winded sentence. Does that mean things haven't changed? Questioned Julio, all eyes on him. How do you mean, Julio? Asked the teacher curiously. Well, my mom says that people who don't go to school choose a life of crime and join organized crime and mafias, said Julio. Interesting, Julio. There's some truth to that. Your mom is right. People without education must survive, and they will do what they have to do. So yes, Villa and Zapata led the Mexican Revolution because the situation was miserable. People were hungry, oppressed, and living in slave circumstances. In other words, the revolution took place because people had nothing to lose. There is a time when people must say stop, a time when people must take a stand, a time when people have to fight. If they don't, they are part of the problem. They become a supporter of the oppressors. They give up the right to happiness and the opportunity to succeed. I'll see you tomorrow, class, finished the Greek-like orator teacher, leaving the class jaw-dropped and silent when he walked out of the room. Back to my story. My thoughts stopped suddenly when I noticed that my backup, my friends, the crowd of students, was gone. Everybody was gone. I turned around slowly and thought, where is everybody? The only other student standing next to me was Ricardo, who was also frozen at the side of the gun. When I turned back to see the officer, the gun was already pressed to my forehead. You don't have the huevos to pull the trigger, senor, I whispered, holding the officer's stare. I don't know where those words came from, but I spoke them. What happened next was surreal, like in slow motion, and like out of a scene in the movie Bourne Identity, where Matt Damon disarmed the German policeman. I grabbed the officer's wrist with one hand and snatched the gun from the perplexed cop with the other. The tables had just taken a sudden and dangerous turn. A very dangerous turn. I had the gun. We had the gun. I don't believe this. This is not happening. The officer must have been thinking. He must have felt as if this was a dream. The little bastard just yanked and took my .45. Elio has the gun! Elio's got the gun! Yelled a student, and the crowd of students rushed back inside. Elio, please don't do this, said the judge, looking truly worried now. The talking is over, Mr. Servin. We will continue our conversation once you are ready to release our friends. I said with the authority worthy of El Tigre del Sur Zapata. I mean it, Elio. Please, you and your friends must leave the courthouse premises now. I promise I will not press charges. Just leave now, please. The judge's tone was not strong anymore. It was more like a whimper. I don't think so, Mr. Servin. I don't think so. You and the officers and the entire courthouse staff must leave now, or we'll take you out ourselves, I concluded. Okay, Elio, looky here. The federal police is coming as we speak, and they won't be as nice as I am. The judge's voice sounded more like a moan than a threat now. Enough of this bullshit talk. Get the hell out of here, I said. The event was exhausting and exhilarating, scary and exciting. The high school students looked at each other, probably thinking, now what? This is no Mexican Revolution. We're totally out of line and unprepared. But also probably thinking, is this what Teacher Cadena always said? That revolutions start not with a long and lengthy preparation, but with long and lengthy burdens, that when the moment is right, you drop those burdens and you take the leap. Freeze the story. Mr. Cadena, how could two illiterate people like Villa and Zapata ever lead the Mexican North and South rebel armies? Asked Rodolfo. Simple, class. The recipe for change is very simple. When people, like El Centauro del Norte, Pancho Villa, and El Tigre del Sur, Emiliano Zapata, and educated, wealthy, and resourceful revolutionary people like Francisco Madero are in the middle of social change, that stuff, the brass ball stuff, overpowers everything like a tidal wave eating up anything on its path. It turns everything like a tornado. It's unstoppable, responded Mr. Cadena in his long-winded usual response. Why did the Mexican Revolution take 10 years, teacher? Asked Sergio, puzzled. Why did it take so long? If there are leaders like those three with the brass balls and with thousands of peasants supporting them, why does change take so long? That's usually the case, class. Change takes time. Even when systemic reform has titanic momentum, change takes time. So the sooner you stand up and fight for what you believe, the sooner change will happen, concluded the historian in an exhorting tone. Back to my story. That was the only thing I could remember. Our reality now was that my friends and I were sitting in the middle of the courthouse, waiting for the federal police to storm any minute now. And if we were lucky, the officers would try to negotiate peacefully with the scared and unprepared students. We were so unprepared, in more ways than one. But we had a gun. Only one gun, though. Knock, knock, knock. The courthouse's main door shook when the federal police banged on it. Open the door, federal police! The chief of police yelled. Chirp, chirp. Utter and absolute silence. We were so scared, we looked at each other, not knowing what to do or what to say. Knock, knock, knock! The chief of police banged on the door again. Open the damn door or we'll take it down! There's at least 2 newspaper reporters outside, Ricardo whispered. Let's tell the chief of police that El Tiempo, the local newspaper, is ready to take photos and write about police brutality. We told the Federalists exactly that. They did not charge in, but told us that Special Forces, or the Army, would come in the middle of the night and storm the courthouse. The Federalists left, and then dozens of parents started knocking on the doors, bringing us food and beverages. It was going to be a long wait, but the tamales, tacos, and sodas that the worried parents brought to feed us all made the stressful situation more bearable. Night time came, and the soldiers knocked on the door. We told them the same thing. El Tiempo is ready to take pictures and write about police brutality. What do you kids want? Why are you doing this? The army captain asked. We looked at each other puzzled. Other than wanting our friends to be released, we didn't know what we wanted. Release our friends from prison, I yelled. It don't work like that, kid, the captain yelled back. We want 2 buses and an audience with Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas, yelled Ricardo. Besides being the son of Lázaro Cárdenas, a previous Mexican president, Mr. Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas was a favorite candidate for the presidency of Mexico, and right now he was Michoacán's state governor. We got 1 bus and an audience with Governor Cárdenas. The bus arrived at 6 a.m. and we had the audience at 11 a.m. that same morning. When the time came, our political envoy of the students stood in front of the governor. The National Palace in Morelia, the state capital of Michoacán, was intimidating and impressive. Freeze the story. Lázaro Cárdenas, the governor's father, was also born in Michoacán, Cadena. My story teacher started the class. Mr. Lázaro Cárdenas was also a general in the Mexican Revolution, and later he became a great Mexican president. People say that, like other Mexican presidents, President Lázaro Cárdenas stole from Mexico, Sergio blurted out. Well, that depends on who you ask, said Mr. Cadena. But for historical purposes, President Cárdenas nationalized Mexican oil, taking it away from the claws of American privatization and imperialism. Yeah, but they say that he and his family up until now get royalties from our nationalized oil. Sergio did air quotes with his finger. He was a book nerd and was always challenging teachers. It's complicated, Sergio, but you're right, partly. Mr. Cárdenas' family does get some royalties, but it's because he's always been a smart businessman, and he did, in fact, invest in government bonds. The teacher said patiently. But, more importantly, let's look at the big picture. Besides his contributions to Mexico, Mr. Cárdenas' contributions have expanded beyond our borders. Not many people know this, but remember Fidel Castro from Cuba? Yeah, the communist, Mario yelled. Well, yes, but remember, communism and capitalism are 2 competing systems. Yeah, you said that both can be good, but if they have corrupt officials, both systems can be bad, Mario asserted. In a roundabout way, that's true, said the teacher. But right now, I'm talking about revolutionary thinkers. I'm talking about movers and shakers, people who make history, people who change history. All politics aside, I want to focus on how Fidel Castro and Che Guevara defied the most powerful country in the world and succeeded. All right, I get it. So what about Castro and Che Guevara? Mario asked, frustrated. He wanted to get into a philosophical debate with the teacher about why capitalism was better than communism. He knew Mr. Cadena was borderline socialist and communist. Before Fidel and Che Guevara did a coup d'etat in Cuba, Fidel was in exile in Mexico. And, well, President Lázaro Cárdenas supported Fidel Castro and the Che Guevara with finances, military training, and political asylum. Lázaro Cárdenas was a critical ally for Fidel and Che Guevara, so they could overthrow the Cuba capitalist government. Back to my story. So I hear that you boys broke the law, said the governor. Yes, sir, but with good reason, said Ricardo. Since he was very eloquent, he was the appointed spokesperson. We are great admirers of your father's contributions to Mexico, his contributions to Cuba, and his fight against Imperial America. Our parents also voted for you when you started running for governor. Your contributions, sir, to our beloved state of Michoacan don't go unnoticed. But you know all of that. The reason we are here, sir, all we want, sir, is that our imprisoned friends get a fair and speedy trial and be released. You know your history, boy, said the governor with a proud smile on his face. He loved when people talk about his father's good deeds to Mexico and the world. However, the way you kids went about this is totally illegal and subversive. The governor stared at us. But I'll see what I can do. To make a long story short, our friends got a speedy and fair trial and they were finally released. Did we get consequences? Nope. Up until this day, I don't understand why not.
Juan, Colorado me llaman, soy señores de Michoacán. Y hasta los más salidones al mirarme muchos se van. Traigo mi cuerpo una silla que es de cuero, plata y marfil. Al ciento para que entre rendir, que viva mi tierra Michoacán y deme charanda para brindar, que Juan Colorado ya está aquí, montado en su cueco en huracán. Cuando me encuentro resuelto que de frente quiera pelear, con mi pistola y machete por mi suerte yo he de ganar. Que viva mi tierra Michoacán y deme charanda para brindar, que Juan Colorado ya se va, montado en su cuenco en huracán.